So welcome people that are attending the webinar. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in the room as panelists. Maybe Septi, I'll just ask that you move so that you face the window so we can actually see your face a bit better. So otherwise, that's much better. Such a lovely smile. We'd rather have that on the camera than this the silhouette. And for some reason, the technology doesn't allow us to see Safisha today. So those of you that are planning to come to the conference, you will have to actually be at the event to witness that and to see too. But yeah, the first ever international conference for business advising that we host here in South Africa, which I think is a big step forward in terms of the industry that we serve, in terms of the professionalization of business advising, mentoring, coaching, and then of course also in terms of what we as professionals do and how we improve what we do with our clients. So let me just switch off the screen share, then you can see our faces. So my name is Christoph Oosthuizen. I am a business coach, business advisor, also a member of IBASA, one of the professional bodies, and serve on the marketing committee, and in that capacity hosting quite a few webinars for IBASA members as part of the CPD. So I'm quite excited to see that there's some from other perspectives also interest in this space, and we must thank Septi and the people at OSIBA for the initiative shown in bringing together the first ICBA conference this year. Looking forward to seeing that as an institution and contributing towards the industry as we go on. So Septi, we have in the room as the director of ICBA. We also have Liesel Kostlich in the room from the services CETA, a key party in the conference, but also in the space of small business development and entrepreneurship. Safisha and Wandwe from Catalyst for Growth. We must apologize now already because for some reason Safisha's camera isn't working this morning. And then we've got Renelle Jacobs from Comensa, one of the professional bodies in this space too, to share their thoughts with us and discuss what we're going to anticipate happening at the conference. By the way, if you haven't signed up yet, we have a link at the end of the webinar that we'll share. That will really make it easy for you to sign up for the conference if you haven't done so yet. There may in fact be people on the webinar that are already so keen to attend that they also come this morning. But otherwise, if you're unable to attend, you'll taste something here, and perhaps by tasting it, it would be enough for you to say, but listen, I actually need to attend when two or three or 4 3 days on the conference. So let's jump into it. If I can ask, by way of introduction, by the way, we'll stay fairly informal, so please use the chat to pose questions there if you want to. Good morning, Josie, Itisani, guys, welcome onto this webinar this morning. If I can start with you, Liesel. So from the services CETA, so remember, perhaps I can remind the panelists, if you mute your mute button when you're not speaking, it increases the quality of the experience of the attendees. So if I can ask that you stay unmuted, Liesel, and others of you, if you can mute yourself, please. Remember the button there at the bottom left. From the services CETA side is, why are you interested in what is happening in the business advising space, and what are your big plans in the near future?
Yeah, so thank you, Christoph. Good morning, everybody. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that the Services CETA is honored to be part of this fantastic initiative. And we're very excited to engage and have dialogue and learn from each other. So we're very excited. In terms of the scope of work, and specifically looking at skills development, there's 2 sets of qualifications related to small business development that fall under our scope. And the first one is the small business development, or what is commonly referred to as new venture creation. And the second qualification is actually business advisory qualifications. And there's been a lot of work that we've done through an initiative looking at how we can support entrepreneurship development in South Africa. where we've actually identified that there's a significant gaps on the supply side in relation to qualifications and career pathing and the occupation generally for business advisors. And then it led to some other problem analysis and identification that we found. So we've got quite a lot of work and plans underway to streamline and better enhance the relevance of skills development specifically for business advisors, and to improve the supply side in terms of both adequacy and quality. So I'm not going to go into detail around that now, but we'll see how the questions and the discussion go. And then I think the second thing in terms of the macro context is just to say that skills development we see as a driver for small business development, and because it really enhances the readiness in terms of access to finance and access to market through provision of information, both formal and informal learning. And we really are exploring how we can be more innovative around the informal learning within our mandate. And then obviously, just to close on that point, then small business development is obviously seen as one of the big solutions to the macroeconomic context related to unemployment, poverty and inequality, just from that perspective.
Yes, yeah, thanks for reminding us about that, because that's why we are working with small businesses and supporting them in contributing towards our economy. But yeah, of course, this webinar format is one of those informal formats of learning. So yeah, we are practicing what you're talking about too.
Good.
The challenge of the qualifications are quite a bit more significant than putting a webinar together quickly. But looking forward to that too. So that is some of the stuff that you started to mention. We'll talk more about the programs just now, about the conference. But some of those elements, of course, play into the whole issue of professionalization and policy and so on too, that are the topics of the conference. So Liesl, if we can move on to you, sorry, Ronel, if we can move on to you. You come from a bit of a different perspective in terms of the practitioners that are out there in the field. So what is Comensa, and why are you interested in this? Remember to switch the mute button off. You're still muted. Maybe I can try unmute you. There you are.
Can you ask Nick?
We can still not hear you.
Page for the program. First program. Just a cover page.
We can still not hear you. If you have your headset, you can plug that in. Because you're still muted. We don't hear you. Can't hear you.
Okay, headset's in, but it
now
might not work. Is this okay?
We can hear you now.
That better?
We hear
Good.
you.
Good. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. We feel very privileged and very excited about this conference. So Comensa is a body, a recognized body, where we have registered, and a lot of our coaches are credentialed, and we make that available to the public. And then for the members, we help them grow and we help them to develop further. So that's a little bit of Comensa. We are very excited to be part of this, to introduce to the public coaching or to those entrepreneurs. So we're giving them 20 minutes free coaching, almost like a try before you buy experience.
Cool. So there's even some demonstration of the practice of coaching going to happen at the conference, if I understand you right.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So, so if I can move on before we get to the director of the conference. You are with Catalyst for Growth. Why are you? What is Catalyst for Growth, and why are you involved with the conference?
Okay. Sifiso Ndando here. Catalyst for Growth, as some of you would know, is a relatively new entity that has come into the small business ecosystem to try to generate a conversation around monitoring and evaluation. because it was seen that probably there is a gap in that space, especially in improving the quality of BDS that is being provided in the ecosystem. So our mandate is basically to work with the players within the ecosystem on monitoring and evaluation, specifically on collecting data on the performance of SMMEs that have been given whatever support that have been given, and doing analytics on that data, and then helping the partners to benchmark and hopefully over time be able to see what is best practice, what really works and what doesn't work in the ecosystem in terms of BDS, various forms and types of BDS and the various methodologies that are being used in the ecosystem. So we want to support evidence-based decision making by all actors in the ecosystem, whether it is buyers of BDS, it is practitioners who are actually delivering BDS, but also particularly to impact positively on the performance of SMMEs. And use this same data as well beyond just benchmarking to actually do trends and use the data to see what kind of trends, what are we learning as an ecosystem, but also what is emerging and what then how does it influence the redesign of programs, the funding of programs, and ultimately even the policies around supporting SMEs in the ecosystem.
So your involvement or your interest in the International Conference on Business Advising, what would that be?
Ours would be obviously in matters relating to the quality of BDS, but also particularly on the measurement, on monitoring, evaluation and measurement of the impact of BDS.
Okay, good. So in a way, if the practitioners are busy delivering based on the policies set by the institutions like the services CETAs and government departments, then you are measuring what the difference is that is actually being made in the service delivery. So that is quite an interesting perspective. Sometimes we don't like being measured so much, but if we want to know that we are doing the right stuff and compare different things, different ways of doing, I suppose that is a really important insight, the input that we need for making the right decisions going into the future. So I know that the conference is packed with some discussions around the future and how we get better at what we do. And Septi, so if I can come to you, we all just noted the ICBA when you guys have conceived of it and have done a lot of planning and taking the risks of putting resources behind this. So as ICBA, as the organizers and you as director, what motivated you to take these steps towards putting together the ICBA, first one in 2017, and anticipating going to the future as an annual event?
Well, Christoph, first of all, I must say thank you to you for putting together this this webinar. I mean, I really just like the quality of your work, and it shows. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to you. And of course, talking about resources, I have to say thank you to Lizzo from Services CETA, because they've come on board in a big way as partners, and so has the Department for Small Business Development. So really appreciation to them. Now, to answer your question directly, Christoph, you will know, I mean, you and I have been in the business advising environment for quite some time, and our connection through IBASA. But first and foremost, I'm a researcher. I'm not a business advisor. So I don't put myself out in the market as a business advisor. As I've been doing research in the field for more than 20 years and reading extensively what's going on both in South Africa and around the world, one thing has become very clear to me, that of all the support mix that we can provide to SMMEs to ensure their birth, their survival and growth, business advising is right there at the top in terms of ensuring their success. If you go to the conference website, you will see some direct quotes that we've put there, which actually demonstrate from around the world the importance that is attached to business advising as a support measure. And I know that we talk a lot about access to markets, and this is important, access to finance, this is important, skills and that kind of stuff. But business advising connects directly actually to, to the skills bit, which is what Liesl has spoken about earlier. And so we really felt that, and when I look at the domestic situation, I find that there's a number of players in that environment, which is a good thing, but that there are also still some significant gaps. And I think all of us who are involved, whether directly or indirectly in that field, will readily acknowledge those gaps. There are supply gaps, there are quality gaps. And where Catalyst for Growth, my friends Fiso, is coming in, there are measurements, significant measurement gaps. And in an environment where you're talking about considerable investment, both by private sector and public sector, in the whole small business development field, but specifically in this case in the area of business advising, we are very weak on measuring our performance. And this really differentiates us from other people, others around the world, like the UK, for instance, which is quite an inspirational example for me, and Denmark and places like those. So you will see that the theme of the conference, you see from our communication that we say we're taking a 360-degree view of business advising. And we're really looking at it from a policy and regulatory perspective. Whether what we're talking about is government regulation or self-regulation doesn't really matter to me. We all would agree that we need to regulate the field in a professional way because it's a professional field. And then, of course, we come to the professionalization of the field of business advising, and we look at the practices, at the current practices, around the country and around the place. And then, of course, we look at measurement. So we believe that all these, are very important, not just for the profession itself, but more importantly, for the clients of the profession. And the clients of the profession are SMMEs. We believe that all these topics are important. So that's why we've, put together our program around those 4 topics.
Septi, before we come to the details of the program, perhaps if you can give us some insight in terms of the speakers that we can expect. In fact, I'm putting up did I get the right one there now? Can you guys see the speakers there? I see the whole panel of speakers in front of me. Some things to look forward apart from yourself, which we see there on the speakers list too.
Okay. Well, I thought you were all coming to listen to me, so I'm feeling a bit disappointed, that I'm not the main attraction. Well, okay, Christoph, look, you have, and our listeners have the speakers in front of them there. We really believe that we've pulled together the who's who in the industry, both locally and some international speakers that are coming. And, I could highlight, Richard Weinberger, who comes from the Association of Accredited Small Business Consultants in the US. And I was just looking at his presentation the other day. It's quite exciting what he's going to be sharing. And of course, he's going to be doing the training on the 3rd day, half-day training. And the reason, by the way, we did that is because when we started the journey, we started with 2 professional bodies, and that's being the IBASA and SAIPA. And to them, the issue of continuous professional development came up right from day one as an important thing to do. So that's why we added the 3rd day so that we could accommodate that, so that it doesn't impinge on the 2 days where we really want to have a conversation on the substantive issues relating to business advising. But as you look across there, you will see that we really have the key players in the industry coming to talk about this. And Comensa, I'm particularly excited. I think this is a new thing. What Comensa is going to be doing, this coaching cafe, where they're going to be giving this 20-minute free coaching sessions to yourselves included, if you want. This is open to everybody. So I think we've really structured a program both from the speaker perspective and from the content perspective that we think is really rich and will be enriching to those in attendance.
Yeah, great. By the way, we indicated that one of the attendees on the webinar today will get access to the webinar without having to pay the fee. So please stay to the end of the webinar to get the details on that. But in the meantime, by the way, other panelists, I'll come back to you just now. Perhaps we can talk about the program in a bit more detail. I would ask you, I'm going to ask Septi just to run us through the program quickly, but if I can ask each of you to just identify one or two things that you're specifically looking forward to when he runs through the program, and then to share that with us afterwards. So what I'll do is I'll just bring the program up on the screen, and then Septi, we've got all three days program, so we can page through that, but we're looking at day 1 now. So can you just quickly run us through it and what we can expect of these different sessions, and specifically what people that are on the webinar today, the attendees, so by the way, we're getting more and more as we speak. So Ben, Bebe, David, Hilton, Kobus, Lindiwe, Rui, you guys, what you can expect when attending the conference over the 3 days. So, Septi, if you can just maybe quickly run us through the program.
Well, thanks, Christoph. I think for me, with all these conferences that we've done over the years, one of the key issues is always to compare ourselves to our peers around the world. So we always start these conferences with some kind of, sharing of an international experience. We're not an island, we learn from our peers around the world. So at this point, excuse me, at this particular conference, we have just selected, because we couldn't have the whole world, we've selected some countries that we think have lessons that we'd be interested in, and that was the US, Botswana closer by, and Denmark. As a matter of fact, there was a large delegation from the Department of Small Business Development and ICBA that went at the beginning of this year to Denmark on a study visit and looking at business advising. So they've got some very interesting lessons for us there. So those are the three. And the idea was not to really cover the whole world, but, was to look at, practices and policies around the world. So they'll give us that perspective, in a sense, as to set the scene. And then we move into a discussion on policy and regulation. And maybe one point I need to make there, Christoph, is that one of the reasons why the Department of Small Business Development is so involved in this is that they have identified business advising as one of the key areas of focus for them going forward as a department. So in a sense, they've asked themselves the question, what are the 3 things that we need to do exceptionally well as a department, working with industry and small business development in this country? And one of those 3 things is business advising. So that is why they're getting involved. So they're not just getting involved from a policy and regulatory point of view, but they're wanting to get involved in order to learn from the industry what it is that the industry needs the department to do in order to support them to deliver more effective and impactful business advisory services. So we're going to focus on that. And it is really, really important. And I know that, when people hear regulation and policy, suddenly, they go, government is getting involved. What is this thing going to look like? I think government is coming to just listen. I was at a conference yesterday where Mujalifa from the department said, we are here to listen. And they're coming to listen from industry, just sharing with them how they think the industry should be, regulated going forward. Whether it's self-regulation or government regulation is really neither here nor there. Everyone is looking for something that works. But I think for me, the real nub of the discussion at this conference is the professionalization of business advising. I'm not a business advisor. I'm not a member. I'm only an honorary member of IBASA. I'm not a certified business advisor. But as I'm in the field and I'm listening, I know that there's a huge discussion on the question of professionalization of business advising, and that's where the likes of Services CETA, come in, as Lizel indicated earlier, through the skills development in the business advising field. So that is going to be one big discussion topic. The second big discussion topic is going to be the practice of business advising. How do we actually do this stuff? What methodologies are there? What tools and techniques are there? You know, how is business advising being perceived in the market? You know, the reason they took the steps they took in the UK was that the government was concerned that business advising was getting a bad name because it was fragmented, you know, varying quality standards and that kind of stuff. And quite frankly, my own take, you may or may not agree with me, my own take is that that's where we're sitting as a country. And we need to arrest that situation, you know, right now, you know, going forward. And so there's going to be a substantial discussion on that as well. And then, of course, as Fiso indicated earlier, on the measurement, the measurement question is very crucial. And we as a country, not just in business advising, as I said, right across the spectrum of small business development, are not really great when it comes to measuring. You know, we're putting a lot of resources into small business development. What are we getting for the investment that we're making? You know, whether you are sitting in government, you're sitting at services sector, or it doesn't really matter. You're sitting in a large company, it doesn't matter. So that is really, in a nutshell, you know, the main content. If I'm not talking about, you know, the networking cocktail and that kind of stuff, but that really is the main content of the program.
Yeah, can you just talk a bit about the last day 3, and what is to be expected there? The two kind of streams there. What's up there?
Right. Thank you, Christoph, for reminding me on that. So we decided to split day 3 because we kind of felt that, you know, the day 3 is really when the department takes the lead in terms of focusing us as the industry on discussing the future of business advising from the perspective of all those aspects that we have discussed, you know, policy, regulation, professionalization, practice, and measurement. So we've kind of assigned that day 3 to the department. So I'm going to step off the podium as conference director, and the department is going to step on the podium and say, okay, now colleagues, you know, what is business advising going to look like going forward? How do we want to drive it together? That's one stream. The other stream is the continuous professional development. As I said, we call it a learning workshop. This is where we've invited the Association of Accredited Small Business Consultants in the US, Dr. Richard Weinberger, who does training all over the world, to come and deliver certain modules. He delivers a very comprehensive program under his training called the SEMP approach. Of course, we didn't have enough time to do that. It's usually delivered over a week. So together with IBASA and SAIPA, in fact, I was not even involved in that process. It was CEDA, IBASA, and SAIPA. We gave them the program content and we asked them to select what they believe are the most important modules from a continuing professional development perspective. And they selected 5 modules, which Dr. Richard Weinberger will then be delivering on the 3rd day.
Great stuff. I just lost control of my, there, I can stop the screen share there. Thanks. Always a little technological challenge that emerges when but it's amazing, in fact, that we can do it because apart from us all getting into one room during the conference, we are connecting here, perhaps even with people that otherwise would not be able to benefit from it. So this technology really kind of offers opportunities for us to connect and learn, which otherwise we would not have had. So I did warn you, the other panelists, that I would ask you to identify 1 or 2 things that you are specifically excited about the program. So maybe if we can start in reverse order this time, Ronel, what are you specifically looking forward to? Maybe also what professionals, practitioners like mentors and coaches and business advisors would be able to gain from your perspective in attending the conference. We must remember to unmute you. If you can't find the button, I'll see if I can do that for you. There you are.
Okay, cool. I think the learning workshop is going to be brilliant because it's covering quite a variety of information and learnings there. And the forum discussions are also going to be very, very good. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then obviously the coaching workshop. That's going to be really, really good.
So what is the coaching workshop about?
It's actually not a workshop, it's a coaching cafe where we introduce coaching to some of the conference attendees, where they're going to have 20 minutes with coaches and obviously explore the opportunity to move forward with coaching from there. So a lot of people do not know what coaching is. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to introduce coaching to the public and to the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, great stuff. And apart from the coaching, if you listen to issues like the policies and the topics that Septi mentioned, is there perhaps something that stands out for you that you think would, from a practical perspective, from that of a practitioner? So if you think of someone that's serving the needs of their clients, their small business clients, what do you reckon they would gain from attending the ICBA?
I'm having a bit of a problem with the sound at the moment.
Okay, so maybe let's move on then. Sophie, so if I can come to you and I'll ask you the same question, what are you specifically looking forward to in the program? We also see that your name was there, so clearly you're looking forward to that session. But what else are you looking forward to in terms of what we're expecting to see at the International Conference for Business Advising?
Okay. Obviously, Comrade Septi, I think, has outdone himself and put together excellent. There's a bit of noise there. Can you still hear me?
Come back.
There was a bit of noise. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you now. We heard that you were giving compliments to your colleague there. He's smiling very broadly.
I think it is, actually. I think if you look at the program, there is from day 1 to day 2 and day 3 is a climax, but the build-up is just excellent. So it's if I was to choose, I would have difficulty in terms of choosing which of the days actually would be exciting, because I think each one fits to the other and each one links to the other. But for the purpose of just highlighting particular interest because of C4G's particular interest, I think day 2, which talks about measurement and performance of the performance of business advising, I think it's going to be quite key, because we want to listen in and understand what the thinking is, and maybe somehow influence that conversation as well based on the experience that we have in that area. But I think that also towards the end of that day, there is the conversation with entrepreneurs. I find that particularly exciting, because there are many of these conferences where we come and as practitioners and talk about SMEs, we become experts in it, and we talk about all these theories and all that. And we sometimes forget that this is about people whose voices are probably more important than our own voices. So the fact Septi was putting the conversation with entrepreneurs at the end of day 2, I think is excellent. I'm always excited when I hear the voices of the real people that we claim to be talking and working for. So I think that would be my interest. But obviously, day 3 is also exciting, because the consolidation of the discussions of day 1 and day 2 is quite exciting, especially from a policy perspective and an action planning perspective. An excellent program. Thanks, Septi.
Pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to that last morning, specifically to see some of the topics that we've covered in the previous days solidifying into a direction going to the future. So instead of sitting on the sideline and commenting, and I think maybe mixing with a lot of business advisors and practitioners out in the field, I know that there is kind of like to be honest about it, a pet topic that we have, we'll kind of skinner about, what the small business department should or should not be doing, and, whoever, what other program, what the mess that program was in, or, you hear that quite often. But not often do we have the opportunity to actually constructively engage and shape the future of business advising. And this really is, that last day really is that. So I'm not sure, Alil, if that's something that you're looking forward to as well, or are there other components in the program that specifically is of interest to you?
From my side, I think, one of the things I've realized is that we take it for granted that people are networked and engage in dialogue. And maybe that happens, but there are many people that are not part of that network and who don't have access to these conversations. So I do think that this conference is going to play a critical role from an information sharing perspective, and everyone will take something different out for themselves and will walk away with a different learning. But the aim for me is to influence, for me, the apex of the triangle, which is policy. And to really look at what the direction of that policy and how to shape the direction of that policy. So I think that might not be directly evident or an immediate outcome, but I think over time, that's what we're all trying to influence, is to influence and shape policy, and then obviously to improve best practice. So one of the big things that the CETA focuses on is the mismatch between supply and demand, and how from a delivery perspective we can ensure that supply is relevant in terms of demand. And I think there's a lot that can be done to hear and understand from business advisors what their needs are. And so there's been some research done. You yourself have been involved in that, Christoph. So I think that those messages need to come out quite clearly. So I'm looking forward to that coming out. And then to understand some of the models and practices that have been tried, and we can learn from successes and failures alike. And so we'll share some of that during our inputs at the conference. So in terms of my expectation, I think a recognition around the need to improve quality through standard setting, a recognition that we need to have better coordination of supply, and ultimately the benefit for business advisors is that through better coordination, we're actually facilitating access to market in a more structured way. And then lastly, just to say that for me, no one entity, irrespective of mandate, can achieve this on their own. And there's been a great emphasis in the post-school education and training system around collaboration and partnership, and not just for the sake of it, but for actually achieving outcomes and striving towards impact. And one of the things that we've experienced is that you only have a real partnership when there's joint development, joint design, and there's a mutual interest that speaks to your own target and mandates in implementation. And I think that if people walk away with an understanding that it's about partnership and in execution and delivery, I think we would have achieved a lot. And I think Septi's, through his research and understanding what the gaps are, is really bringing all of these role players together to share information and to kind of jointly come up with better ways to move forward. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, we don't have a forum like this often to be sharing our ideas. Even if we don't always agree about things, it's a forum to share and shape our ideas going to the future so that we can find things that work. And of course, the whole issue of professionalization of the industries can impact on those people that are out there working. I mean, so if I, as a business advisor, have to comply to certain standards being set, and I can't, it may impact my business. So it's a really important topic, not only from a policy perspective and from the questions that we ask about impact, but also from the practical experience of the practitioners, because it may influence the way that we can actually run our own businesses and charge our clients and offer services in the marketplace. So it's not just kind of a policy conference in that way. It's kind of a real practical, what will it do to my business scenario too. So in that sense, I can just say business advisors, mentors, coaches, if you can come at all, you should. And by the way, there's an offer at the end, a link that you can click through to go register, and the one lucky attendee today on the webinar will also be able to come for free. So by the way, we haven't engaged much with our attendees, but I see some people have typed in the chat area some comments and so on. So I would ask if you would indicate to us what element in the program is exciting to you. We can respond to that, or if there's a specific question that you have. It's not, we don't have a huge audience here today, so you can just use the chat to type your question in, and we'll follow on that. Any questions that you have about the conference or attending? I see there are some people that are quite closely involved like Hilton and Lesego from Ibasa, Hilton from Growth Wheel in the room too. So, I mean, if you want to actually share something, put up your hand and we can inject you to also share your ideas about what you're looking forward to in the conference, so we can make it a bit more interactive. I already see Hilton is right there with his question or his comment. Enterprise development practitioners must be considered in the stakeholder as a stakeholder target. So,
yeah, Christoph, could I just come in on that? I think right, he's right. In fact, I saw earlier that Josie is there. Josie comes from the Enterprise Development Council of South Africa. And the view we've taken here is that, we need to open and broaden the conversation as much as possible. And I think, one of the real strengths here, and I want to thank ahead of the conference, each of the professional bodies. I think it's unprecedented to have a conversation involving 8 professional bodies coming together to talk about business advising. They're all coming from different angles to the topic. But I think the fact that they are there, is in itself an indication of the importance that we all attach to this. And, just speaking directly to the business advisors, I was with the Department of Small Business Development last week, and I said to them, you know what, you're a key partner in this. I mean, they're putting they're investing in the thing, but they are the leader of our field. I said to them, use this platform as a platform for conversation with a diversity of players, in business advising. And we identified these categories that we wanted them to invite because, by the way, I just wanted to say thank you to the professional bodies because they've really come forward, with, invitees to the conference. But to the department, for instance, we said, bring in the users of business advising, like commercial banks. Bring the commercial banks in. Now, if I was a business advisor and I was looking for work, I would want to connect the big commercial banks over there. ABSA is one of the speakers on the program. Bring representative of entrepreneurs, business associations. Make sure they are in the conversation. Bring the suppliers of skills development, the universities. Make sure they are in the conversation. So we've said to the department, don't just look at yourselves, but look at all the different players in business advising, both from a supply side and from a demand side, and bring those people to the conversation. So I think, in particular, our networking evening should prove to be, if the department, does what we've asked them to do, it should prove to be quite an exciting evening.
Yeah, thanks for that. I wanted to ask you what you're specifically looking forward to Septi, apart from it all being done and dusted and having been a success by the end of the Thursday afternoon, which I'm sure as a conference organizer is kind of a huge relief if it all worked out well or reasonably well. Sometimes you can't prevent things from happening. But yeah, so what you specifically, you've been involved in the business advising, small business development field, mainly as a researcher initially, but now I see you kind of as one of the people that are really shaping the industry for us. So we've come quite a way, sort of from 20 years ago 1996, when we first had a white paper, the first time ever that we had a policy on small business development in the country, to today. And Septi, and also for the others, by the way, the invitation is open, sort of put up your hand. There's a little button there. In fact, the one to the right that says raise hand. I can bring you into as a attendee. I can bring you into the conversation here too, if you wish. You must just make sure that you have your makeup on or your shirt on when. Then you can participate in the discussion too. But Septi, you've got that historic perspective on what's happened in the industry and so on. So what is this next step that we're entering now, and why is this a key step for us, and specifically then, sort of the outcome of that last day, that last morning of the workshop, where will that leave us? Or you've got a big expectation and have put in a lot of effort into making this happen. What is your big expectation at the end of that day?
Well, I think I would sum up in 2 for me, Christoph. Learning is always a big part of my life, so I really, really look forward. I'm not going to play a very big role there. I'm going to play a behind the scenes role, but I'm excited about being in that room with all of you, learning from you and your different perspectives and so on and so on. The variety of the professional bodies that will be there really excites me, and I look forward to learning. But it's also about really together, the issue of thought leadership is a very big thing for me. And I think those of you who've worked with me, we've just worked with Services SETA now in a fantastic, project. And by the way, Nigel needs to just say a little bit about what the Services SETA is doing and is going to be doing at the conference, because I think that's quite exciting. But you yourself from IPASA, I was on the board of IPASA, and the big thing to me was always this thing about thought leadership. And it's not just a vain self-promotion thing. It's really about saying, how do we put our heads together to shape the industry that we're in together? It's not about, as Lizel has said, it's not about one player dominating the space, or one or two players. It's about all of us, putting our minds together to shape this field. It is, I said at the beginning, it's recognized as a very important field for the success of small business. And so to me, it's about all of us putting our thinking heads together and saying, where do we want to take it next? I don't have a blueprint, Christoph. I'm not a business advisor. I mean, it's even strange that this thing is led by a non-business advisor. I don't have a blueprint. But you guys are the experts. I'm obviously a player in the field as well. So let's come together and shape it together. Just before I leave here, Christoph, I saw one comment that there were people who said, they're registered and they are a member of a professional body and they didn't get the discount. And please, those practical details, if they could just be addressed to my office, the email address should be on the website. We will respond to them.
Great. So, Bebe, I hope you got that. If you registered and there's a hiccup there, especially if it's around the discount that you must get through your professional body, just contact the ICBA staff and they'll sort you out. Or if there are any other hiccups in terms of registration, I suppose that would be the same process to do. So, Liesl, Septi put a challenge there to you. He says you're not telling us the full story. So if I can come to you, and we're also kind of running close to the end of the webinar. So maybe what I'll do is I'll quickly show you the address which you can go to if you are looking to register. Just share that. ICBA.ociba.co.za, and you'll find a register here button. So you'll have to complete your registration and create your profile, and we'll then receive a invoice that you must pay by EFT. So there's a bit of a process that you need to follow there too, but it's quite straightforward and simple. And hopefully those of you that have not registered yet would be keen to do so after all of these exciting news that we've shared. So, Liesl, if I can ask you what it is that Septi is telling us you're not sharing with us yet, and why that is so exciting, and learn, sort of about those things you're hiding from us.
It's not intentional, but maybe I'll just indicate that our board last year, in fact, almost exactly a year ago, announced at our AGM to stakeholders that the board would like to establish a National Institute for Entrepreneurship. And our stakeholders gave resounding support to that. And we've been going through a process, a very intensive stakeholder engagement process across the ecosystem to really understand what the real problems are. And they are deep and wide and very diverse. And then what is the response, and why within South Africa we are not being successful in actually achieving growth in the small business sector that we are looking forward to and targeting. So our board member, Kate Meloso, will be doing a presentation on the second day around midday, and she'll be sharing some of the conceptual solutions that the Services SETA has developed and is seeking to design and implement to, on the one hand, enhance and integrate the ecosystem on the supply side, and on the other hand, provide a top-up package of services that will facilitate sustainability and small business development. And I have to say, one of those, and there's 9 programs or service offerings that we're looking at shaping and developing. And she'll share with you what they are. And we've got a lot of intervention partners. So we've literally signed an MOU with the Department of Small Business Development to develop an online South African government ecosystem where we can in an integrated and consolidated way, look at matching supply and demand and enable the use of technology. We also recognize that whilst the CETAs have got a policy imperative to drive formal learning, that there's demands for informal learning. So applied learning through business advisory services being one of them, but there's many other forms of learning like peer-to-peer learning and so on. And so we really want to create the space and opportunity to be innovative in terms of creating new solutions that are going to be relevant and meaningful for entrepreneurs and suppliers within the ecosystem. On our business advisory services program, I think one of the big things we've realized is that if there is so much diversity, both in terms of sector, size, location, and stage of the business, and we would need to, and there's different types of services that are rendered, coaching, mentoring, advising, consultants, and need for technical skills as well as operational skills and entrepreneurial skills. So we really need to what we're seeking to do is to develop a framework where we can identify products and services and cost those products and services and ensure that there's greater relevance in the supply side. And for us, from enhancing quality, we would want to understand against that framework, what are the career paths? You know, what are the different occupations and career paths, and overlay that with qualifications and look at the types of learning and the diversity of learning offerings that need to be put in place. For example, CPD. CPD is not something that we're driving at the moment. It's not a learning intervention that we have a target for, and we have identified that we want to do some innovative stuff in this area. And ultimately, if you have a product and you have a service and it's costed, then you can facilitate and enable funding from multiple public entities. CETAs, there's 21 of us. We operate in different sectors, but essentially we can collaborate and mobilize funding and unlock funding to the greater benefit of South Africa as a whole. So I think I'm going to leave it there. There's a lot of other things we're doing, but Kate will be sharing more of that on day 2. So please do come and listen to her presentation specifically. And then we have a couple of other speakers. Our CEO will be doing an intro and sharing a little bit more as well. One of our board members, Vikesh, who's in the marketing industry, is going to be a panelist. I myself will be a panelist. I've got a big passion around impact, so M&E is absolutely critical, and I'll share some of my thoughts in terms of challenges and how we need to then find solutions to meet those challenges. And then our partner, it's not yet on the program, but we're establishing a partnership with False Bay TVET College, and so we've asked them they're also part of our process, and we've asked them to be one of our speakers and to share some of their practical experiences in providing business advisory services to entrepreneurs. So we look forward to their input as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So while we have some other professional bodies on the call, if you want to join us, you must just click that, raise your hand, and I'll inject you into the webinar, and you can also maybe share from your perspective why this is an important event. If you're not well dressed, then we'll understand that. If we can perhaps move towards wrapping up this webinar, we specifically need to release Septi because he's got some important things to go, make sure that we have a good experience next week. If I may ask of each of you to say why I, as a practitioner or a policymaker or buyer of business development services or any of these categories of people that are coming to the conference, to the International Conference on Business Advising, why I should not miss this event. Very shortly, each of you. So Septi will end off with you, but Liesl, if we can start with you while we're still fresh on that side. I've unmuted you. You just need to unmute you. Yep.
So why participants should not miss the event? For me, it's all around learning and understanding what the connection and opportunity points are. And when I started doing some more aggressive work around entrepreneurship development, I realized that an entrepreneur is about finding opportunities and seeking out those opportunities and taking action. And in fact, I would want every employee in South Africa to adopt that methodology and approach in thinking. And we need to work together to make it infectious. I mean, that's the kind of infectious disease we want to see in South Africa, is around solution-oriented thinking, a mindset of seeking out and finding opportunities. And you do that through people and through connections, and then taking action. So that's what I would say to our participants. And please don't stop for yourself. Go and share it with everyone else that you know that's practicing in this field, and tell them they've got to be there. It's an absolute must.
Great stuff. I don't think any of us can put it better. Maybe we should just stop the webinar right there.
Yeah, I agree.
But maybe, Sifiso, you do want to share your thoughts briefly too. Remember to unmute. You unmuted.
You've got to do that after Lizzo. I'm trying to think the different people who should actually be at the conference, and the ecosystem is full of very diverse players in the ecosystem, and I think each one of them really have something to take away from this conference. But I would, in addition to what Lizzo has said, that we go to the conference to learn, but I think we also go to the conference to influence, and I think it's very important that we all have experience as different players in the ecosystem, and we need to bring that to bear at the conference by making sure that we influence the conversations and we influence the outcomes, and government will be there, practitioners will be there, and various players, the CETA will be there. So it's a good opportunity for us to influence the thinking, and hopefully out of this will come. One of my main criticisms of the ecosystem is that it doesn't appear to have a clear leadership structure that actually drives movement within the ecosystem. And I think this conference probably presents that opportunity, but it will only be useful if we all come in there with a view to learn, but also to influence what comes out of the conference. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that, Sifiso. So, Ronel, I know you've got a whole plugging routine there that you need to do to start speak. So maybe if you want to do that, why should specifically mentors and coaches not miss this event?
Well, I think this is an opportunity that is great. It's the first time I've heard of this. And, there's a saying, if you want to be successful, you should be with successful people. And here we've got a handful of brilliant people that is willing to share and to teach. And I think young entrepreneurs should actually grab this opportunity. And also a great thing is to network and to connect and to try and create as many opportunities for one.
You've gone quiet there now too.
Sorry?
Back up. We hear you now.
And one should not miss out on opportunities like this. Every day you should do one thing in your business that is great and will move you forward. And here we have 3 days of exactly that.
Yep. Great. I'm very much looking forward to it too. So maybe we can ask Septi to give us a last word. By the way, the person that's winning the free ticket will receive a email soon. So look out for that if you've attended. Or if you already have a ticket, you can pass it on to someone that you really think should be there. But Septi, if I can ask you to give us a exit message there in terms of why the range of people that we want at the conference, why they should not miss this.
Well, I think Hilton has been making some very useful contributions here. He hasn't spoken, but I mean, he's posted a lot of text here, which I find quite useful. So I think for me, I mean, some of the things they're saying are really pointing to what do we want to do after this conference. I mean, a conference, I've always said to everybody I've spoken to, a conference is a conversation starter. So we are all coming here to start a conversation about the future of business advising. in the country and hopefully in future around the continent. And so I want all of you, quite frankly, to be there in order to shape that future. So there's nobody after this who says, well, I wasn't part of it, I wasn't aware. You've got to be at the table. That's one thing. For me, personally, the reason I want to be there is really to learn from all of you, to participate in shaping the future. But here is the last one. There's a large contingent that's coming. We've actually invited Junior Chamber International. They represent young business people around the country. Junior Chamber is very active international as well. We've invited them, Junior Chamber International, South Africa. There's a large contingent that's coming to the conference from them. And I just want to say to those of us who've been in the field for a very long time, it's an opportunity to inspire our young entrepreneurs. You know, they're coming there to interact with you, to learn from you. Let's give them the impression when they leave that conference that we're really serious about, you know, creating an entrepreneurial future for this country. Because they're going to go back and talk to their members. One of the things we've been discussing with JCI South Africa is to see whether we can, as one outcome of the conference, come up with a program of youth business coaching going forward. And they're very excited about that. So they're coming to the conference to kind of gauge what that thing might look like, what the possibilities are. And the Department of Small Business Development as well, by the way, is very excited about that prospect. So there's a lot of things, you know, cooking. Let's see whether we can deliver on them next week.
Yeah, indeed. In this age where there's so many things happening around us, which we feel we don't have control over, here's something that we can shape. So my call on you as a participant, you know, sort of whether your name is Ben or David or Eric or let me see who else is on the call, Kobus or Lindiwe or Rui or Samantha or Sebakeng or whatever, you know, sort of your destiny is at the International Conference for Business Advising next week. So looking forward to see you all there. Thank you very much, Salizal, Septi, especially for you, Runel, and Safisha too, for your participation today, and for you guys that showed up at the webinar. I hope it was a learning experience in itself. And I'm looking forward to next week. So I'll put up the slide again just as an exit so that you can see that website address that you need to go to if you want to register still, icba.osiba.co.za. And otherwise, see you Tuesday in Johannesburg.